There was basically no security for this application. He thought he had a complete product. He released it, and it took a while for reality to catch up with him, but reality caught up. Good ideas may win, but bad execution, especially when it comes to security, loses the game. I think Apple has fallen off. If Apple were still Apple, they would have one of the top integrated AI experiences on the market. My top candidate for the next Apple is OpenAI. Well, for one thing, browsers are going away as a thing, you know? For another thing, that I imagine would change the entire structure of the internet. I don't know if you heard about the T app, but over the last week or so, there have been a couple different, we will call them hacks, of this app where a lot of ladies had their photos, their IDs, and even their chats hacked, and they're openly available now. There was basically no security for this application, which is how it happened. People just opened a URL and ta-da, private information was available to them. Let me go into the backstory a little bit. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about what it did. I don't care about that. But it is important to note that it has been and continues to be in the major app stores. So here's the Wikipedia article. Now, the IDs that were stolen, hacked, perused, apparently the requirement to upload an ID was removed in 2023, which is the same year that the app started. Okay, all right, so that's one thing. But apparently the company said that the IDs and selfies only affected users who signed up before February of last year, 2024. All right, a little weird, but okay. Apparently they must have patched something, but also didn't. Very strange. In addition, the second data leak, which I guess, yeah, data leak sounds better, more appropriate, more true. It rings more true than calling it a hack. 1.1 million private messages between T users from February of 23 to July of this year. That's a lot. That is huge. And let's see. 404 Media is what broke it, apparently, the story. They initially reached out to the T team, and they said that they're working expeditiously to contain the incident. That was before they released the article. Once 404 Media released the article, then the T team shut down the messaging service, and only then. And then they also stopped talking to people. Very sus, let me tell you. There's a big story behind this that I want to talk about, a particular angle, and it's not, no, again, I think the way that it was built, very suspect. Lots of things, they don't make sense, honestly. Lots of people have pointed out that people initially assumed it was vibe coded. But if the app was initially released in early 2023, vibe coding wasn't that far along at that point. So this app, you probably can't blame it on vibe coding, at least not primarily. But if you can't blame vibe coding, what can you blame? I imagine, I don't know, but I think what probably happened is the owner, creator of this app paid people and probably paid bottom dollar to have these things built. And so these developers did what he asked for and absolutely nothing more. So since he didn't know all the details of how everything needed to be architectured, what kind of security needed to be in place for all these different things, assuming he cared, he didn't know. So he thought he had a complete product. He released it, and it took a while for reality to catch up with him, but reality caught up indeed. I would say probably vibe coding technically was not the culprit. It was not why things happened like this. However, I would also say vibe coding is the spiritual successor to this practice of paying developers bottom dollar for just doing the technical specs of what is requested of you. And if you don't know to ask for more, you're not going to get more. That's really the same thing that happens with vibe coding. If you don't know that certain security practices need to be followed, if you don't know that there's certain architectures that are going to work at scale or are not, if you don't know all of these things, you're not even going to consider building them. And if you don't ask for them, the AI probably isn't going to nudge you and tell you, hey, why don't you do it this way? This branches into a discussion of vibe coding, and I wanted to bring in a few discussions on Twitter, X. This is Amjad Masad. He's the CEO of Replit. And I want to focus on this quote right here. AI does generate a lot of their code. He's talking about like big time CEOs who he's been talking to. AI generates a lot of their code, but whatever time saved in generating the code is lost back to debugging, reverting bugs, and security audits. Okay. Now, that's not the only thing. And AI is going to get better and better at coding, especially if it's able to access more context and all of the right kind of context, and it trains better on what kind of things need to be done. And as humans, the programmers get better and better at communicating what their needs are with the AI. But there's always going to be something, some portion that is unhandled by the AI or the AI isn't able to handle well. Even if AI is the best coder on the planet, which maybe technically it already is, there's more to developing than just the code. If you are not guiding the AI to a certain extent in architecturing things, in checking off all of the things that you need to do for high quality shipped products that are secure and everything is locked up tight. The AI, eventually over time, AI will be able to do more and more of those things, but never all of them. There's always going to be things that you overlook and therefore AI just isn't going to do for you. But right now, on top of that, AI code tends to be very buggy, and there's a lot of code that's shipped that is created by AI, but it needs to have that guiding hand of the human to either tell it precisely what to do at some points or clean up after it. Here's the next one. The biggest struggle is coming up with something different, something that doesn't look AI generated. That's what this guy is, his biggest struggle. And that is going to become an even more prominent struggle in the future. Now, Amjad replied that his enterprise customers integrate their design systems, which everyone is going to start using design systems very soon. Atomic design, even if you don't realize you're going to be using it, anyone building things, there's going to be some kind of atomic design principles under the hood that you don't know about that you're using, or maybe you know about it and you're kind of, you're working in that space yourself. But one way or another, it's going to be there. But even once that happens, There are going to be standards and defaults for everything. And how do you break away from those standards and those defaults if you don't know what you want? If you just go with whatever AI tells you, your things are going to look like everyone else's, unless you go through the effort of building out your own design system. This guy says that the code, AI code that is written in his experience, it's usually unshippable without a lot of manual work. And again, I can hear the chorus of like, it's going to be so much better in a month, in a year, in 2 years. Yes. It's never going to be perfect though. And for that remaining 10% that still needs to be done by the human, who do you think is going to do a better job? Someone who knows nothing about code or a world-class software engineer? One of them is going to have the edge. Edges matter. Edges, by the way, an edge by definition is thin. This is an edge. Edges are not wide chasms usually. In the real world, you need to collect a few edges, and that is how you get ahead. That is how you survive. The hard part is determining what those edges should be for you. Now let's talk a little more broadly. One of the lessons from this T incident, I believe, is the lesson of good ideas win, bad execution loses. So now and in the near future, especially in software, more than ever, if you have a good idea, you can win. And you don't need to wait around for someone else to build it for you or for you to learn how to code and develop and do the whole process yourself. You don't have to convince a huge team to do things. If you have a good idea, you can go out, build it, release it, and have success. However, even though good ideas win, they can win the game for you. Bad execution will lose the game for you. And that's where the details come into play. Details that are, for most people, very boring, very arcane. They're like, who knows how to look for, these certain things for security, for quality, for all of these things, unless you're already a software developer. That is one of the perpetual edges that software developers still have and will continue to have. You have to have the ability to take over at some point for all of these things, no matter what. Whatever you're building, 90, maybe 95% of your time is going to be spent partnered with AI and, telling AI what to do. AI is going to be churning out 90% of the code or whatever you're working with. You're going to have to go in 5 to 10% of the time and do some things yourself, though. That means that if you're currently vibe coding, but you're not also learning how to code, you are going to be hitting barriers constantly. And the people who know how to code or are learning how to code are going to have an edge on you in that area. The current vibe coding technologies, Cursor, Replit, all of those others, Windsurf, there's a decision point coming for those. Right now, they are trying to split the difference. They're in the middle, and they're creating magical, wonderful experiences where people are able to code without coding effectively. That is not a sustainable model for building. You kind of have to pick a lane. We are in a moment where it seems like you don't have to. And to an extent, you don't. If all that you're aiming for is prototyping, if all you're trying to do is work on a simple app or something that's internally facing, something that doesn't have to worry about the external world, something that is not going to scale, something that is not massively multiplayer, you can do it yourself. Totally. Again, all of those like prototyping, internal facing, simple feature set, and or, not extremely multiplayer, doesn't have to scale. Okay. But if you get more than 2 or 3 of those things that you're trying to accomplish, you're going to have to go into the code yourself. You're going to have to know what you're doing at a pretty high level at some point, or hire someone else to take over for you at those points. One way or another, software developers are not going away. We will still need them. And a case in point, a great example, because it's undeniable, I think, but the similar logic holds in other areas as well. But the perfect lens to look at it is security, because there's always bad guys. Bad guys are always actively adapting to new situations, to new methods, to new softwares. Whenever people have solved a security problem, well, there's bad guys out there working on a way to break it, to break that solution. So no matter what you've done, there is no acceptable standard practice that is going to last forever. And in the current environment where AI is helping people on both sides, it's an adversarial relationship, good versus bad. The bad guys are working just as hard, maybe harder than the good guys. It's a perpetual struggle for dominance and survival. So if you think that just doing the standard thing or being unaware of what needs to be done from a security perspective, if you think that's going to cut it, you're going to lose the game, because good ideas may win, but bad execution, especially when it comes to security, loses the game. I have a lot of things bouncing around my head that I want to share. And so I don't know if this is going to be a perfectly tight narrative that I'm following. But speaking of security vulnerabilities, there is something that I don't think most people have heard of, but I imagine it will become very common parlance soon. And that is something called prompt injection. If you're familiar with security at all, you've probably heard of things like SQL injection. Prompt injection, of course, is injecting things into a prompt where you can leverage the proclivities of AI to be helpful, serviceable, providing answers. You can leverage that to inject prompts in ways that are unexpected by the system, so that AI will give you information that it really shouldn't be. It's coming and it's going to be a big thing, especially if you pair that with all of the other technologies that are now littered across the landscape. You scrape a bunch of web pages, you find some information, you do some social engineering. That's another security flaw, vulnerability. You leverage prompt injection, do some old-fashioned SQL injection, whatever. There are going to be huge frauds committed, and there will be a lot of vulnerabilities that people aren't even considering to look for in their own defenses. With all of that considered, again, the security aspect is forefront because the mechanisms of how it operates and the adversarial relationship between good guys and bad guys, it's a constant struggle. It's never going to end. That's a perfect way to, even if you don't think like general quality or architecture or any of those things matter because, AI will be able to fix it. You assume AI will be able to fix all those things and you don't need to worry about those things ever. Okay, but security. If for nothing else, security alone, there's going to be a perpetual need for very high quality, knowledgeable humans to be in the loop, working on things, being creative, and installing and implementing the best possible solutions. And not everyone can be expected to do that. Of course not. Where does that lead us? Where am I leading things? I think that in the future, even though hypothetically anyone in the very near future, almost anyone is going to be able to build almost anything, at least as far as software goes. Other things will come later. But when anyone can build anything, that's why, number one, ideas win, okay? And also why bad execution loses, because every detail matters. When everyone can build everything, you're going to pick the one that is executed better. Distribution is also going to be very, very, very important. If everyone can build anything, you're going to go with the one that's convenient, that you've heard of, that you're aware of, that's part of some other ecosystem that you already use, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So good idea, distribution, execution. Security is a big part of that execution. All of those things combine to a scenario where I think there's two different kinds of builders in the near future when it comes to software. Okay? At one end of the extreme is software developers who are still around. Okay? At the other end of the extreme is people who never touch code at all, and yet they're building. They're building amazing experiences. The software developers, what are they building? A lot of them are going to be building things who the intended user is this other type of builder who never touches code but is still building amazing things. There's going to be ecosystems within ecosystems. And if you are a builder, but you're not really a software developer, how do you get people to trust your product? Even if you are a software developer, in this atmosphere where there's going to be huge frauds coming and you don't know who or what to trust, there's going to have to be certain trusted names that people build their solutions on top of. I think that a huge part of the future is people building products within other products. That is the eventual destination. When anyone can build anything, distribution matters almost more than anything else, except for execution and having a great idea. And then trust. You bring all of those things together. If you are a builder, is your dream now to build an app that you sell in the App Store? Or are you building something that's part of a larger product ecosystem? There's a couple things coming that I'm going to tie back into this as well. But yeah, I think that there is going to be a huge wave of products built on other products. It's not a coincidence that I chose to build most of my products in Tana, another product. So I don't have to worry about all that lower level shit. Security and architecture, really basic functions that can be such a pain. I hate debugging. Hate it. Don't want to ever do it. Like serious debugging. Like I have to do debugging when I'm building things in Tana, but nothing like it. That's not real debugging. in code, like deep code. No, that's not for me. Sorry. And I don't have to because I'm building on top of other technology. And if you think that that's crazy, that that's going to be like a majority of builders in the future, you would have been the same person who thought that in 1982 that most people would be building software instead of their own operating systems. Levels of abstraction are powerful. They enable so many next level things without having to reinvent the wheel every time that you do something. And yeah, I think we are on the cusp of another level of abstraction. We are about to enter a world where it's no longer, hey, did you get that Flixio app? No, it's buy the Flixio app, a Flemic product. Because we all know that Flemic products are never hacked, for instance. Those are made up names, by the way. Don't want to get anyone confused. Okay, now I'm looping back to another thing. Let's go back to the T app. Okay. Back in my day, the T app would have never gotten approved to the Apple App Store in the first place. Would have never happened because of those flaws. And it's still on the Apple App Store. One of the central appeals of Apple is this walled garden experience. There are trade-offs. Like, you don't have as much flexibility in what you can do in the system. You can't go in and change every level of things like you can in a Windows computer. At least not to that extent. It's not as open of an ecosystem as the Android system, for instance. But in exchange, you get a guarantee of quality. You know that any app has passed extensive reviews. Everything inside Apple has been designed and obsessed about to the smallest degree. Or at least you used to know that. I've been holding off judgment for a while now, but I think Apple has fallen off. Apple is no longer Apple. If Apple were still Apple, I hope you know what I mean when I'm saying Apple being Apple. If Apple were still Apple, they would have one of the top integrated AI experiences on the market. Do they have one of the top integrated AI experiences on the market? No, they do. It's laughable to even consider that there's any integrated AI experience in Apple. Like, technically, they've done something, but it's like, ugh. And then this, where they're not even gatekeeping their app store in ways that they really ought to be. I don't know what the identity of Apple is anymore. If the identity of Apple is not cutting edge, high quality, I don't know what they think they're doing. But I became, I tried to not become an Apple fanboy. But about 12 years ago, I got my first MacBook. I had gotten my first iPhone, not too long before that. And those two experiences hooked me. Okay, I'm in. Uh, I don't want to ever use a Windows computer again. I do sometimes, but I don't like it. I am, we'll call it concerned about the future of Apple. Apple has so much money. Apple has so much brand equity still. Apple has just so much. They're not going to die anytime soon. They've got a long ways to go. So I'm not saying anything like, Apple's going to implode tomorrow, start short selling their stock. No, no. It's probably going to be a slow and gradual decline, but it seems unless they make some real changes soon, it appears to me that they are on an inevitable decline, which makes one wonder if Apple isn't Apple, is there another Apple out there already, or maybe waiting to become the next Apple? Maybe. My top candidate for the next Apple is OpenAI. The final piece of confirmation for me for that was when Johnny Ive partnered with Apple. I'm not saying that I think OpenAI is likely, and I'm not making predictions, by the way. I'm just saying it's likely. They are the top contender, in my opinion. I'm not saying that they're the top contender because Johnny Ive is working with them. I'm saying Johnny Ive is working with them because they are the top contender to be the next Apple. Sam Altman likely pulled the curtain back for Johnny, showing some things, their plans, what they're doing, what their strategy is. And Johnny probably thought, I've seen this before. Let's work together. Let's test things out. Let's see what happens. When you think about it, there's a few different things happening, a few different things spinning in my head as I'm thinking about this. One of them is OpenAI is already building huge data processing centers, enormous. These are big physical products, really. I mean, they're their own consumer in that case, but they're building hardware at a massive scale. And then they did this. Did they release it already, or was it just a tease? I don't know. But, they partnered with Johnny Ive on this little wearable device. Okay. Okay. So I see them building like both ends of the spectrum there. What's stopping them from doing anything in the middle? But it's not just capability. There is an ethos that I see in how OpenAI approaches their products, a seriousness and a strategic nature in how they release things, the messaging that they use, how everything seems to fit into a larger purpose. It feels very Steve Jobs, Apple to me, There's an obsession about quality there. Not that, any of the competitors to OpenAI don't obsess about quality at all, but like all of the pieces are aligning there. And here's one other thing. AI is inevitably going to become It's not quite there yet. It almost is. It's going to become a commodity. A commodity means brands don't matter. You use OpenAI AI, or you use XAI, you use Perplexity AI, you use Anthropic AI, whatever. It's all going to be about the same. We're already well on that path, but it was clear from the beginning, from the get-go, from the moment ChatGPT 3 was released, to me at least, it was clear that AI would be a commodity in the future. So, OpenAI is on a path of essentially working themselves out of a job because they are dedicated to making AI better and better and better. As you make AI better and better, as that flywheel continues to work, you also make AI more commoditized. And if AI is truly commoditized, why is anyone going to pay for your particular AI? Well, how do you, we'll call it, fight back against commoditization? If your main product is destined to be commoditized, but you're bought in to continue to work on that product, how do you still win? How do you still succeed? Well, one method would be vertical integration. So you've got the AI, maybe you have an operating system, a work environment. If that integrates with various other pieces of software, if that integrates with hardware of all different kinds, that really feels like Apple, but AI first, doesn't it? It sounds very logical to me. I think I'll end there on the Apple talk, the new Apple. But there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, a moment of realization that I had. And yeah, I'm not, by the way, remember, I said I'm not predicting OpenAI is going to be the new Apple. I just think they're the top contender. This next thing is even less of a prediction. It's firmly in what if territory for now. But I noticed it seems everyone and their dog is building their own browser now. So on top of Microsoft Edge, there's Firefox, there's Google Chrome, and Brave, Arc browser, but that's getting mothballed. Rest in peace. On top of that, Arc browser, well, that company is doing Dia now, and there's Perplexity's Comet, and there's probably a few others that are AI focused, AI first, AI centric browsers. It seems like probably every major tech company is going to have their own browser pretty soon. So I wondered, why would that be the case? Well, first of all, it's probably easier than ever to make your own browser, I suppose. But then also it gives you that vertical integration, you know? Not only do you have AI, but it's integrated into this experience perfectly because you built it. Okay. It can provide a moat, another revenue stream. There's all sorts of benefits that can accrue to you as a company. And if browsers are relatively easy to build compared to any time in the past, which of course, almost by definition, is probably the case, then why wouldn't you do that? Okay. But then I think about next steps. Okay. If everyone has their own browser, imagine a world where there are not just several, not even just dozens, but hundreds of browsers. Which browser would you use and why? You know? But then take it even further. Imagine literally every product has its own browser. For instance, like, let's go to Tana because I'm a Tana ambassador and I build in Tana. And so whenever I think of things like this, I'm thinking about Tana first. Imagine Tana had their own browser. There's a lot of things that you could do. And I think about that company, Warmwind, I think it was. Like their entire product was it creates its own little mini browser for the AI to do things. Every product, if it's AI centric, sooner or later, yeah, maybe having its own little browser is the only way to, it becomes the only way to survive, you know? Maybe that's the world that we're heading to. But if literally every product that you have has its own little browser, do you need a separate browser, you know? Or would you just access your email and all of your other things in your Tana browser, your Notion browser, your Twitter browser, your whatever? That might be the future. And if that's the future, well, for one thing, browsers are going away as a thing, you know? Uh, they'll still be around. Okay, they'll still be around, but only barely, you know? But for another thing, that I imagine would change the entire structure of the internet. Consider, like, the reason why Tana or any other product would have its own browser would be for the primary reason to go to that effort, you know, would be so that you could make it easy for AI agents to browse and take actions on the web in the environment, you know, inside or immediately adjacent, whatever technically. If the main reason for doing that is to make things easy for the agent, for getting things, for doing things, for digesting things, is it possible that the website, what we consider websites today, is also going to go away or transform at the very least? Maybe instead of having one old traditional website, and you know, just like browsers, there'll probably websites will still exist, but for the most part, it'll be just millions of microsites, essentially. I don't know what the best word for them would be, but focused on just one product or one service or one experience, one little thing. And each of them optimized for agents to be able to take actions, to pull out the right information, to communicate while doing other things, to be able to orchestrate based on different levels of information or action that are required. It seems logical to me that we would get to a place where everything would be optimized for humans and for agents in a way that makes browsers and websites technology that is no longer needed for the most part, like standalone browsers, because every piece of technology will have its own browser effectively, and standalone websites, because 99% of the time, maybe 99.9, those websites would just be getting in the way for most actions. Once in a while, a human might want to see a good old-fashioned website, but for the most part, no. They would want this piece and that piece of the website as part of this other integrated experience inside this product. They don't want the entire website. Why would they? Okay, I think that's it for this little discussion. I have a course that I'm teaching. It teaches you how to really make yourself stand out in the world of AI, how to find and leverage your edge, how to use your mind and agents together to arrive at moments of inspiration better and more reliably, and to determine how to take actions, how to do pretty much anything. Basically, it's how to have the proper brain in a world where AI is everywhere. That starts on Monday, but seats will still be available. For the first week, there's refunds available. The 3-week course, you can experience a third of the course and get a refund if you want. I will continue selling the course through as long as the course is live. Just after the first week, you can't get refunds, but it's going to be worth it. I have a target of providing 5x value for anything that I build, because then that gives me room to make mistakes or oversights in distribution, marketing, and anything else. I think I'm at least close to that with this course. Like, even at full price, there's so much value packed in. But don't take my word for it. Try it out yourself. I think that's it. I'm going to end now. Thanks for listening if you're still watching. Yeah, cheers.
The path looks so long, each step a quiet song. Forward through the dark, moving past what holds us back, leave a lasting mark. There's no way to turn around, just keep moving, breaking ground. Mountains block the way, yet we climb with steady pace. Every obstacle we face builds the strength to set our pace. The only exit leads ahead, through all the words left unsaid. Breaking through at last, as the barriers fall away. Moving hard and fast. There's no way to turn around of calmly moving. Just him to grind, palpitating bound. Taking ground. Breaking ground.